On Thursday, President Joe Biden marked the one-year anniversary of the failed Capitol insurrection. And he went out and he actually made a pretty strong speech about it. I'm going to show you one part, we're going to analyze it, and then we've got a couple more clips. So first, here's the first video. Take a look.
We saw with our own eyes rioters menace these halls, threatening the life of the Speaker of the House, literally erecting gallows to hang the Vice President of the United States of America. What did we not see? We didn't see a former president who had just rallied the mob to attack, sitting in the private dining room off the Oval Office in the White House, watching it all on television and doing nothing for hours as police were assaulted, lives at risk, the nation's capital under siege. This wasn't a group of tourists. This was an armed insurrection. They weren't looking to uphold the will of the people. They were looking to deny the will of the people. They weren't looking to uphold a free and fair election. They were looking to overturn one. They were looking to save the cause of America. They were looking to subvert the Constitution. This isn't about being bogged down in the past. It's about making sure the past isn't buried. That's the only way forward. That's what great nations do. They don't bury the truth. They face up to it. Sounds like hyperbole, but that's the truth. They face up to it.
All right, so look, incredibly strong remarks from Joe Biden. And look, a lot of the stuff that he said, I pretty much agree with. There's a little part of the end, sort of inconsequential, like, oh, great nations don't bury stuff in the past. Well, then that means that there's a lot of nations out there ain't great. Ain't great, because you got a lot of, I know I'm going to get in a lot of trouble with that comment, but it seems to me like a lot of countries, a lot of nations have buried their past, including this one, or at least, you know, the attempt to bury the past. But anyway, I'm not going to get too hung up on that. Overall, fairly strong, fairly good speech, right? And again, calling it an armed insurrection is absolutely what it is. Okay? Yeah, and yes, they were armed. They weren't armed with guns, but they had tasers, chemical spray, baseball bats, flagpoles, all the stuff that they used to assault police. And that's what happened. And let's not forget, of course, about the pipe bombs that were planted at the headquarters of both the Democratic and Republican parties that happened right before the riot. It was all part of an effort, of course, to intimidate lawmakers, intimidate Mike Pence, you know, hang my pants, that whole chant. Yeah, it was sort of the last straw to intimidate Mike Pence into doing the Green Bay sweep, essentially, and basically allowing conservative propaganda to dominate the airwaves and try to convince Republican lawmakers in the states to try to recall their electors so that those electors would vote for Donald Trump instead of Joe Biden in the Electoral College. And so, look, again, it was a fairly sophisticated plan. They knew what they were doing, but it all hinged on Vice President Mike Pence, and he did not execute the play. He did not end our representative democracy, so to speak. So that said, I thought it was actually also great to point out how it was Republicans, and again, you get this narrative from Trump supporters, oh my God, they're trying to silence us, they're trying to cancel us, they're trying to cancel our votes, etc. No, that's what you're doing. You tried to cancel out the vote of the majority of the American people. Again, the majority of the American people did not vote for Donald Trump. The majority voted for Joe Biden. About 7 million more people voted for Joe Biden. And again, let me also note that we all know that that doesn't actually mean anything in regards to who actually wins the election. The elections are not democratic in this case. It comes down to the Electoral College. And the Electoral College, of course, should be eliminated. We should get rid of that. We should actually have democracy in this country. But that said, right, I remind you of this Because not only is it factual, but also because that Republicans have never cared about the will of the people. When they say, oh, we speak on the will of the people, they actually don't. Not at all. They don't represent the people. In fact, they pass laws that curb legal voting, that prevent people from exercising their constitutional right to participate in elections, use little dirty tricks, they gerrymander, they push out laws that drown normal people out of the political process while bringing lots and lots of dark corporate money in, something that unfortunately both parties are now awash in. It's gotten to the point where Democrats have to have an overwhelming amount of votes to overcome some of this gerrymandering in order to keep majorities in the House and Senate. And again, I've got criticisms of the weakness of the Democratic Party in the face of what I see as fascism. And I'll get to that because that really does enable things like Republicans who had stolen, for example, the 2000 election by using the Supreme Court. You remember the giant recounts in Florida and the shady connections with Jeb Bush, who was the governor of Florida at that time. And so we all know that entire debacle. In fact, again, Bush lost a popular vote in 2000. Trump lost a popular vote both in 2016 and 2020. There's two presidential races decided where the winner did not win the popular vote in this country. Now, of course, when the Republicans won, the Democrats conceded. They conceded. Okay, and they did. Hillary Clinton pretty much immediately said, okay, I didn't win the election. And then, of course, she went to complain about it, but she did concede the election. Okay, Al Gore, once again, conceded the election. All right, then. Now, what's different? Well, Republicans, Donald Trump in 2020, said, no, I don't concede this election. In fact, if I lose, he said, and he'd been warning this months before the election, if I lose, it's fraud. And so he's whined about it for years. And so please, spare me. I know the Electoral College decides who's president and not the popular vote. But, as I said, it shouldn't. It shouldn't. And that's a fact. That would actually be make this country a little bit more actually democratic. But at the same time, let's go to let's go to more stuff here from Joe Biden before I go any further into any screeds. Here's Biden. He's going to go directly after Trump. Take a look.
He's not just a former president. He's a defeated former president. Defeated by a margin of over 7 million of your votes in a full and free and fair election. There is simply zero proof the election results were inaccurate. In fact, in every venue where evidence had to be produced, an oath to tell the truth had to be taken, the former president failed to make his case. Just think about this. The former president and his supporters have never been able to explain how they accept as accurate the other election results that took place on November 3rd. The elections for governor, United States Senate, House of Representatives. Elections which they closed the gap in the House. They challenged none of that. President's name was first. Then we went down the line. Governors, senators, House representatives. Somehow those results are accurate on the same ballot. But the presidential race was flawed. And on the same ballot, the same day, cast by the same voters. The only difference, the former president didn't lose those races. He just lost the one that was his own. Finally, the third big lie being told by a former president and his supporters is that the mob who sought to impose their will through violence are the nation's true patriots. Is that what you thought when you looked at the mob ransacking the Capitol, destroying property, literally defecating in the hallways? rifling through the desks of senators and representatives, hunting down members of Congress. Patriots? Not in my view. I did not seek this fight brought to this Capitol 1 year ago today, but I will not shrink from it either. I will stand in this breach. I will defend this nation, and I will allow no one to place a dagger at the throat of democracy.
All right, so again, pretty strong as far as speeches go. Like, whoa, that's an actual strong Biden speech. I'm not used to this Biden. Well, what happened to this guy? Where's this guy? I mean, again, compared to what we've seen since he was elected, we haven't really seen strong Biden. So, and again, he's factually correct. And so, he's saying, and I love the point where he basically points out, oh, so wait, you're saying that the results of the same election where, you had all these governors, senators, whatever, and you had some pretty big wins in this election, but those are all legitimate. Oh, but the one where Trump lost, oh, that's the one that's illegitimate. Oh, okay, fantastic, wonderful, great logic there. It's pretzel logic. It's what it is. It makes no sense. But again, to the people who really believe in this stuff, facts don't matter. They just don't. They don't. And so I do like this because he's poking and poking and poking at Trump, calling him like, no, he's not just a former president. He's defeated. Because he's just poking at him. He's poking at Trump. And again, I enjoy that as much as anyone else. And it's good TV. But here's where I have to get critical. All right? It's just words. It's a good speech. Yeah, but it is just words. From what I'm seeing right now, Donald Trump and anybody else, any of the bigger players in what happened on January 6th are not being held accountable. I'm not seeing any of that. Now, that said, Merrick Garland, assuming that he's continuing his investigation, he says he is. Okay. We don't have any more information. We don't know if you're actually going after the people who are actually responsible for this, who have openly talked about their plans that they tried to put into motion to overturn the election. And not just that, right? We're also not doing anything to prevent stuff like this from happening before, or to even prevent Republicans from getting back into power. Again, there's no voting rights bill. The For the People Act, what happened to that? Can't even get the John Lewis Voting Act, which is massively watered down because they didn't like the fact that the For the People Act actually put limits on corruption, on political corruption, which again, both the Democrats and Republicans love to engage in. And not only that, but they're still not even really pushing back in the efforts that Republicans put into limiting voting. And so, again, and this is while Democrats have a majority in the government. But Joe Biden, and this is what frustrates me the most. I love when Joe Biden gets tough. I actually love it when Democrats get tough. I want to see that. My biggest, I should say one of my biggest concerns or problems with the Democrats is that they're not tough enough. They're incredibly weak and oftentimes feckless. And so that's sort of my problem here. All right? Why doesn't he use this kind of speech at Joe Manchin, who is blocking his agenda? That's my question. Why? It's not just Republicans that are blocking his agenda. Yes, but that's to be expected. But you have Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema that are blocking him, that are blocking Build Back Better. Why is he not going out and using these incredibly, because again, Biden can absolutely deliver an incredibly strong speech. You just heard it right from his mouth. There it is. But he refuses to do so. when it comes to things that actually get policy passed. And that's the problem. That's my frustration. Okay. And by the way, this doesn't mean that everything that Biden has done has been terrible or sucky. No, I again give him great credit for leaving Afghanistan. And this is, of course, when corporate media was just on him over and over again. Oh my, Joe Biden, how could you leave Afghanistan? How could you do that? Oh, the troops, you got to protect the Afghanis. We weren't protecting the Afghanis. We were protecting the opium fields or the poppy fields. That's what we were doing. Same thing. All right. I give him great credit for leaving Afghanistan. 100%. Because that was the right thing to do. And it was the right thing to do. And so what I'm saying is he has the capability of being incredibly strong. He knows how to be tough. He's not weak. He's not feckless. He knows how to fight. Which leads us to the problem. He didn't want to. On some of these issues, the policy issues, like canceling student loan debt, like encouraging the elimination of the filibuster to get Build Back Better, he's refusing to do so. And there's, of course, a reason for that. And he's not being aggressive on voting rights, which, again, is something that is so incredibly important as to stopping the push towards fascism that the right is doing. I mean, for Joe Manchin, getting back to him for a second, right? Now, if I were president, I wanted to pressure Joe Manchin. Well, I would just point out that, hey, I'm aware that your daughter colluded, Heather Bresch, former CEO of Mylan Pharmaceuticals, happened to collude with the CEO of Pfizer in order to keep the price of EpiPens artificially high by creating a monopoly on that drug and then splitting the profits. You got something to say about that, Joe? Come on, man. Come on, Jack. Why don't you just do me a solid here? I don't go after you for that. I don't seek my Department of Justice on you. You just work with me. Pass my Build Back Better. Oh, Jeff, how dare you? How could you propose such a preposterous thing? It's called politics. You don't think FBR didn't have to get tough in order to pass New Deal policies? You think LBJ was just allowed to pass Medicare without a fight? No, it's called politics. You got to get dirty sometimes. And I understand that. You got to get dirty sometimes, and you got to get super tough. And again, Biden can absolutely get tough. And he does so against Donald Trump, and I love it. Do more of that, but actually do it more on policy too. We've got to do that. We've got to fight collusion, we've got to fight corruption, we've got to fight price fixing, and we've got to fight fascism. And what you're doing, yes, it's a great speech, but it is, at the end of the day, just words. We need more words. We need more than words, not more words. We want to see some actions, not just on Trump and January 6th, but again, let's go for policy, healthcare, inflation, voting rights, the environment, fighting against the fascism, going after and solving issues facing real people. Because if we don't, the dagger that he says is at the throat of democracy, we allow Republicans to get back in, well, they're going to make sure that dagger doesn't stop at the throat.